Am I the a-hole for ending my marriage after finding out my wife was planning to leave me, but only after she stayed long enough to do a small career change? Last year, my soon-to-be ex-wife, 32 female, told me she wanted to transition from being a labor and delivery nurse to becoming a specialist cancer nurse. She said she planned to return to college, cut back her hours at work, and finish her training in 2 years. I was supportive, though a little surprised. She had always seemed happy with her career and our life with our 2 kids. But I know people can sometimes spontaneously feel the urge for something more or different, so it wasn't a big deal at first. Her decision put some strain on me. Because she was so busy, I had to take on a lot more to allow her to do less. What used to be a 50-50 division of responsibilities shifted to about 80-20 after she returned to school. About 4 months after she started college, I overheard her talking to her best friend. I wasn't supposed to be home for another hour, but had managed to leave early and had the kids with me. Her friend asked her how she could stay married while keeping up the pretense. My ex said that if she left me, she would never be able to make the career move because she wouldn't have the time to be a single parent while working and training for her specialty. She added that I was supporting her, without realizing she wanted out of our marriage, and that she planned to leave as soon as she secured her new job. Her friend told her this would all blow up in her face when I found out, and she responded that she didn't care. She said she'd screw herself over by continuing to work, even after we had kids. Otherwise, she could have left earlier and made me pay child support while she pursued her goals. When her friend left and the kids were in bed, I told her the marriage was over and that I refused to be used until she got what she wanted. She tried to say I'd misunderstood and was overreacting. She was ready for an argument, but I told her we wouldn't discuss it in front of the kids. Once they were out of the house, we had it out. She accused me of being selfish and punishing her for changing her mind about our marriage. She said that if I were a good man, I'd encourage her to quit her job and support her until she was ready to leave. In the end, I filed for divorce and moved out of the home. I wanted to fight for the house since I had lived there before we were together, but her name was on the deed, and I didn't want my kids to live in a hostile environment. They were already going through a lot, and the divorce has been difficult for them. My ex hates me, her family hates me, and my kids aren't allowed to talk about me around them. I've tried to hide how sad I am around the kids, but I fear they've picked up on it. My ex is fighting the divorce, and her family keeps telling me I'm selfish, and that I should understand a woman has the right to ensure her stability before ending a marriage. But she would have been stable without going back to college. Her job was secure, and before this, she worked enough hours to support herself and the kids on her own if she had to. She simply didn't want to continue in that job. I don't feel like I owe her that support. Maybe I'm wrong though. Now for the top comments. She has a right to leave a marriage whenever she deems fit and for whatever reason she has. But so do you. I find it interesting that her problem isn't trying to fix the marriage, but instead making you her doormat for a comfortable future. Not yours, hers. Not a-hole. There are legal rights and moral rights. She has failed morally and ethically. He needs to get as far away from her as possible. While legally she has a right to end it, it's super unethical to soak him financially before she leaves. Not the a-hole. You do not have to stay in a relationship to be used. I would have advised you to not leave the home if I was your lawyer, and never put a spouse on a premarital asset. My family didn't think I should leave the house either, but staying wasn't the right thing for my kids. They would have witnessed too much hostility and fighting. Even if I refused to engage, if she was willing to act like that around them, it wouldn't have been fair for them to live through. I'm sorry you were going through this, but honestly, the a-holes are your ex and anyone who told you to stay. That is ridiculous. The marriage, they wanted me to leave. I did have a few people suggest I should have tried counseling with her first, but she was already gone and didn't want to work on us. She just wanted a safety net. Next story. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let my fiancé play dad to his nephew because he's biologically his son? He was the sperm donor. My fiancé donated sperm to his brother and his now ex-wife because they were having issues conceiving naturally. The wife was checked by multiple doctors, but his brother refused to get checked. because he didn't want people to think he was less of a man. So he roped my fiancé into secretly donating sperm. I wasn't comfortable with the idea, but my fiancé comes from a close-knit family. So I knew I wouldn't be able to convince him not to help his brother. So I didn't even try. His brother was supposed to raise the child as his own, but he couldn't cope with the fact that the baby wasn't biologically his. So he divorced his wife before she even gave birth. Ever since, my fiancé has been supporting her financially because his brother left her with nothing and she doesn't work. To an extent, I was okay with this because she's probably the biggest victim in all of this. And my fiancé's brother is a huge jackass for putting her in this situation. But it did make me uncomfortable when he started buying her gifts to cheer her up or going to the doctor appointments with her. She has since given birth, and now my fiancé has decided he'll raise the baby with her because he doesn't want the child to grow up fatherless. Also, a big reason I think he wants to raise the baby is because his brother has made it seem like she was unfaithful to his family, so they're questioning whether the baby is part of their family or not. My fiancé doesn't want his nephew to be shunned. I'm completely against this because it was bad enough that I had to accept another woman birthing his child before me, but I don't want to be a stepmother. The agreement was that my fiancé would only be an uncle to the baby, which is something I can cope with. Anything more is too much. I know this isn't an easy situation for the ex, and I sympathize with her, but this isn't my problem. She shouldn't have let her husband push her into something she wasn't comfortable with, and my fiancé has already done more than enough for her. Am I the a-hole? Honestly, you should just leave. Your fiancé is probably the legal father instead of a sperm donor, because the way they went about this doesn't sound legal. As far as a court is concerned, there is no difference between this conception and a regular one, unless there were clinics, doctors, and legal teams involved that designated your brother as a sperm donor legally. He's just a regular father and will be required to do things like pay child support. Courts have already ruled on DIY donation, and it basically doesn't count as a donation at all. On another thought, your fiancé needs to be honest about the situation to the entire extended family, who are basically calling this woman a cheater and a liar. He's still protecting his brother, who is making up lies about his ex-wife, so he doesn't have to feel guilty about the fact that he did something insane, because his ego was bruised. Blamed it on his wife, and then dipped out so he wouldn't have to take responsibility for his actions. The entire family should know what a piece of crap he is. They should know he is infertile with defective sperm, that he roped his brother into this insane plan, that his wife didn't cheat on him, and that he purposely impregnated her with his brother's sperm, possibly without her knowledge, and then dipped out because it wasn't his kid. Right now, my fiancé isn't the legal father, his brother is. This wasn't a DIY sperm donation. It was done officially at a clinic, but my fiancé wants to be recognized as the legal father now. Walk away. Let them become a family. It is his son, and he has feelings. He is showing his family that the boy and his mom are family. You don't want to be a stepmother? Then don't marry him. It's better to leave now before he leaves you for her. You will always be second now. He has a child. The deal has changed. Next story. Am I the a-hole for telling my wife and sister-in-law they need to accept their half-brother doesn't want a relationship? 6 months ago, my wife, 26 female, and her sister, 24 female, learned they have an older half-brother from their mom. They had never met this man, nor heard their mom or anyone else talk about him before. The only thing they know is that he was primarily raised by his paternal grandparents. When they found out he existed, they hired an internet PI to help them find him. The PI found his social media profiles and full name. From there, my wife and her sister made contact. There was no reply, so my sister-in-law decided she would message him once a week in case he wasn't getting the notifications. She and my wife did everything they could to convince themselves that he wasn't responding for some other reason, other than the fact that he didn't want a relationship. After a few months of this, he finally replied once, saying he wanted to be left alone and did not want a relationship or any form of contact with them. Soon after, his profiles were made private, so only his friends and followers could interact with him. My wife is pregnant with our first child right now, and some people have suggested that hormones are driving her to obsess over this. But neither she nor her sister is willing to let it go. I'm trying to be a supportive husband, but they're talking about doing things that border on stalking or harassment in an attempt to get this man to agree to a relationship. They don't understand why he would reject them when they never knew he existed. My sister-in-law showed me his reply. I didn't say this to them because I'm not sure, but it sounds to me like he did know they existed and chose to stay away. I could be wrong, of course. I suggested therapy to them, but they said a therapist wouldn't help them have a relationship with their brother. The other night, my wife and I were discussing baby names again when my wife and sister-in-law started talking about their half-brother and how he should be around when the baby is born. This then turned into a conversation about how they could find a way to get in front of him to plead for a chance. That's when I told them they were handling this badly and needed to learn to accept his no. I said they don't have to like it and they're allowed to have their own feelings about it, but they need to accept that he has said no. I told my wife that her half-brother was occupying more of her mental space than our unborn son, and he's going to be born soon. Our lives are about to change. Sister-in-law said I wasn't being understanding enough. My wife didn't argue either way, but she looked really thoughtful, and she's been quiet since that conversation. Am I the a-hole? Not the a-hole. Sorry, but it's kind of delusional for them to say their half-brother should be there when the baby is born, at least given how things are currently going. All you did was give them a reality check. He asked them not to contact him. Any further attempts could be harassment. You don't want them messing around and ending up with a restraining order. If the half-brother ever changes his mind, he'll reach out. The ball is in his court, but he may or may not even pass it back. That's up to him. They can't force a relationship. Right? I want someone I've never met before to be there for the birth of my child. Not the a-hole. Not the a-hole. Sharing DNA does not require a relationship. They need to accept this. His family is the one who raised him and the people he built a life with, not some random people he happens to share an egg donor with. Why is this so hard for them? Last story. Am I the a-hole for oversharing to my in-laws when they called me on being a typical guy who doesn't put effort into maintaining his family relationships? My wife, 25 female, comes from a close and happy family. Both parents are really involved with their kids, who spend time with and enjoy being around one another. All the siblings get along well and are there for each other. They have family dinners regularly, are in each other's weddings as bridesmaids/groomsmen, talk almost every day, and have a very active family group chat. If someone in the family needs help, they will be there, even if it's in the middle of the night. I, 25 male, come from a very different family. None of my family came to our wedding, didn't even RSVP, and they were invited. I can't think of a single person in my family I'm close with. The rest of my family isn't close either. Once we turned 18, we were expected to leave our parents' house, and there was no support. The sibling relationships were pretty volatile. My parents don't want to hear from any of us unless we're dead, which would be hard to inform them of, but that's exactly what my dad said. My mom might have been in the hospital last year. I still don't know. I tried calling my dad and he didn't answer. He texted me that he didn't appreciate the multiple calls. When I told him what I'd heard and asked if my mom was okay, he ignored the question. I tried texting her, but I got no reply. I only know she's alive because she left a voicemail weeks later saying she didn't want any of us thinking we could come home for Christmas. I'm not even sure I have the correct numbers for most of my siblings. Honestly, I'm not sure even a death in the family would bring us all back together. I could be an uncle right now and wouldn't have a clue. It's the way it is. We never had a close family. As kids, we were expected to entertain ourselves and deal with everything alone. No help from parents, no sibling bond. I'm the youngest, and that was my normal. My experience with my family made my wife's family seem surreal to me. I had never been around people who cared so much about each other and actually wanted to spend time together. I'm pretty sure I'd have been locked out of the house as a kid if I tried to spend any real time with my parents or siblings. I was upfront about my family situation. My wife knew everything and had been with me during the rare call with a family member. She was stunned by the total indifference and lack of care. She's never actually spoken to a single member of my family. I spend time with her family frequently, and since we got married 7 months ago, it's become pretty clear that my in-laws think I'm just one of those can't be bothered to make the effort with family type of guys. My wife always has my back, and whenever a comment is made about it, she always speaks up. I've told her family before that we just weren't close. A couple of weeks ago, we met for a big family dinner, and my mother-in-law made a comment that if I picked up the phone and talked to my family, I'd be closer to them. My wife told her it's not that simple, and that my family just isn't interested. Both her parents responded with something like, maybe they're tired of chasing after their kids. My wife said they shouldn't blame me when we've already explained it. They said they simply couldn't buy that an entire family cares so little for one another. At that point, I went into exactly how it had been growing up. The expectation to move out at 18 and never come back to our parents. I read a few texts I had from family members and even explained a situation with my mom possibly being in the hospital. I showed them my phone and everything. I told them that's the reality of my family. That's just how mine are. And while I appreciate that they have a close family and can't imagine it, they don't get to put all of that on me. My wife agreed with me and told them she hoped it would be the last time this was ever mentioned. But her family felt like I overshared and made the dinner awkward. Maybe I did go a little over the top with it. Am I the a-hole? Now for the comments. You made things awkward? Oh no, those were the consequences of their crappy behavior by prying into something that's already been explained to them. Maybe next time they'll stay in their lane? Not the a-hole. Maybe, hopefully. I think they had their eyes opened if nothing else. How are they all adults and not understand that some families are just toxic and dysfunctional? They are either, as a whole, very sheltered or just willfully blind. I'm glad to hear that your wife stands up for you though, and I wouldn't worry about what your in-laws think. They wouldn't have had to hear about it if they had just used their manners and let it go. Not the a-hole. I think in their minds, families might not be as close, but they still expect a certain amount of love and care in all families. They don't grasp the concept that you can have a big family where love and care never existed. To them, it's unimaginable, because even the worst families they've encountered were better than the one I came from. I can understand it seeming strange. It's like how I felt when I first encountered them. It was so different from what I was used to. But I never doubted they were close. I realized families could be different from mine.